Today we're going to talk about something a little interesting, the chips and pickle story. And we're going to explore UI mistakes that you may have heard of, or maybe you haven't, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, this is me. You can find me in all sorts of places. And I am actually a UX professional, okay? So I own my own company and work with a lot of organizations. UX all day, every day, and work with a ton of developers, which is great fun. I totally love it. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about pickles. First question, participatory. How many people here, and I can't see you too well, like pickles? Raise hands. It's usually most people. Okay, I see that hand. Now for the really, really important question. How many people here hate pickles? Oh, this is good. Usually I only get one or two. Okay, with your hands raised, right? This is for you today. Okay, so I hate pickles too. I desperately hate them. Now, in America, two things happen with pickles, or actually one thing that happens with pickles that I hate. In America, when you order lunch, you are going to get a pickle, whether you asked for it or not. The pickle is automatic, the pickle is assumed, the pickle is a requirement. Now, the other thing that I just don't like about pickles, that some of you who love pickles, you will love them. You will love this. When a pickle is on your plate, all those juices get into everything. If you love pickles, wonderful. But if you hate them, it's horrible. It's horrible. So I've had to get in good practice. When I order my lunch, I would like to have a ham sandwich, a turkey sandwich. No pickle, please. And sometimes that happens, but most of the time, I get the pickle anyway, because the pickle is automatic. The pickle is understood, the pickle is an assumption, the pickle is a requirement. So it shows up on my plate. Sometimes I know that it was on my plate and they removed it and gave me the plate anyway. No, not on my watch, no. That plate goes right back, and then I become a terrible customer. So I've had to get very, very good at finding a way to get no pickle. So at first I would say, please no pickle, but that never worked. Never worked, always get the pickle. Well, then I got more emphatic. Please, really, I don't like pickles. I would really like it if you don't put one on my plate. I still get the pickle. And then I might say, please, look, no pickle on my plate. And don't you even just put it on that plate, take it off, and then give me the plate, because no way. I still get a pickle. So this is frustrating for me. And I started tracking my progress because I changed the way I went about it. I changed the way I asked people to give me no pickle. I'm not saying there's a spreadsheet, but there's a spreadsheet. Okay, now, here's the thing that finally worked. Well, better success rate according to the spreadsheet. I wasn't going to say that I'm allergic to pickles. I'm not. I just hate them. So I'm going to be honest. And finally, this is what worked. I said, I would like a turkey sandwich and no pickle. And this actually worked, okay? And I don't know why the big show and dance worked. Maybe it's just memorable. And they go back into the kitchen and say, hey, this guy, I remember he doesn't want a pickle. Or maybe they go back into the kitchen and go, this guy, don't give him a pickle, because I don't know what's going on. But it worked more, and so I'm very excited about that. Now, by the way, I understand that this is a UX UI conference. We're getting to it. We'll get there in a minute. Okay, but first, the villain of the story. This is a lovely sandwich shop in America, Jason's Deli. It's actually delightful. I love it. But they just always give me a pickle, no matter what I do. Always. And started to get me a little upset. As you can see, every meal comes with a couple of things at Jason's Deli. It comes with chips, and it comes with a pickle. Right there. They don't tell you it comes with a pickle, because this is America. It's automatic. It's an assumption. It's a requirement. It just shows up. And I got that pickle one too many times, so I decided that I would look into this a little bit. I'd go to their website, and I'd wonder, where are you telling me there's a pickle? Do you put it anywhere on your website? Anywhere at all? Do you even tell me you're going to give me this horrible thing on my plate? And the answer, of course, is no. It's a very long site, by the way. And that's just, I had it in Photoshop, I had to cut it in half. It's actually double. Okay. They don't talk about pickles at all, except in one place where these JD pickle meals, it's what they call their kids' meal. I don't think it has anything to do with pickles. That's it. So I'm a little upset at them because they don't even admit that pickles apparently exist, let alone that they give them to me all the time. Now, here's where our story really gets going. One day, I was having a bad day. You've had a bad day before. We all have. Client is being unruly, wants things they shouldn't want, difficult time figuring out a problem in code, whatever it is, bad day, and I just wanted to get away from the office and go have a nice lunch at Jason's Deli. And I go through the whole thing. I say, please, I'd like this sandwich, and no pickle. They gave me a pickle. And I was very upset. I got that pickle again. I did the whole dance. And this young man comes by. He might have been 17 or 18, probably a manager. And he says, and how is everything today? And I said, Frank, I gotta tell you, I need to understand your pickle process. And he laughs at me. I'm like, Frank, I'm not kidding. I need to understand your pickle process. How does it go from no pickle to pickle? Right there. And he's very nice. And he says to me, I don't know, but I'll find out. And off he goes. And that's very fine. I thought, whatever, I'm never going to hear from this guy again. But he comes back and he tells me, I have an answer to your question. I'm going to tell you. And this is what he told me. On the cash register, where you order your food at Jason's Deli, there is one button. One button. And on this button are written the words chips and pickle. Now, everyone gets chips. Everyone gets chips at Jason's Deli. And the pickle is attached to the chips in the interface. If you press that chips button, you are getting a pickle. In fact, de facto, you have asked for one. We can't do it this way, no. We can't have chips or pickle, no. We have to have chips and pickle. And this interface quirk is the source of my problem. And as a UX guy, now I'm interested, because now I have a UI problem. I don't have a pickle problem anymore, and I want to understand it. So I decide maybe it's just Jason's Deli, and it's just going there in person, in real life. What if I went to the mobile site? And I notice on the mobile site, all right? I've got many options. I love options. And I decide to go look for my side, and I want chips because everyone gets chips. But now on the mobile site, there's all sorts of varieties of chips. Notice many of them say pickle, some don't. But of course, the chips that I want, whoops, let's go back. The oven-baked potato crisps, because I am a healthy person, attached to a pickle. If I touch that radio button, I have asked for a pickle. I don't want one. I don't want one. And then I notice this. I can give them a special message. So I'm going to give them a special message. I want to say, please, 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 for the love of God, please, no pickle. And so I'm going to write that. But that's as far as I got. Because it's limited to 25 characters. They don't tell you it's limited to 25 characters. There's no error message. You just have to find out on your own. So then I thought, 25 characters. I'll give you 25 characters. And so I did. That's 25 characters, including spaces and exclamation point and punctuation. Completely 25, not 23, not 24, not 26. Okay, I feel a little better. And then I notice I can personalize my meal, as if that's very important to all of us. Let's personalize our meals. I'm not going to personalize my meal. I'm going to tell you more about how I feel about the pickles. And I know you're only going to give me 25 characters, so I'm ready for you. And I give you my message. That's 25 characters, spaces and punctuation. Exactly. I got a pickle anyway. And so I'm very upset at that, of course. Now, so it seems to me that bad UI at a sandwich shop has destroyed my lunch. It has ruined it. I know what you're thinking here. I know what you're probably thinking. Come on, Dean. Come on. That sounds like a problem for people who don't have problems. But then again, I am a UX UI guy. That's my job. So I thought, if I'm seeing all of these problems with something that means a lot to me, what about some real problems? And I started thinking, there's got to be UI problems out there that caused real problems, societal problems, existential problems, disasters, maybe. And so that's what we're going to look at. But we're coming back to the pickle, because I'm not done with the pickle. There's more to learn about that. I'll never be done. We're going to start, excuse me, with a little story I like to call 38 Minutes to Live. Let's try this again. Okay. This is very new for me, by the way. This is new. When I first tried it, it didn't work. Because I'm an American, you see. Okay. If you were just minding your own business on January 18th, 2018 in Hawaii, you're driving in your car, you're drinking your coffee, everything is fine with the world until you get this message on your cell phone. Everybody in Hawaii got this message on their cell phone. This message was on every billboard, it was on the radio, it was on your phone, it was announced on television. And yes, that means a nuclear missile is headed your way. That's a big deal. Everyone in Hawaii is then thinking, wait a minute, how close are we to North Korea? And it turns out, close enough. And they have big missiles, don't they? And is this real? Is this real? And everyone's wondering, is it real? This alert lasts 38 minutes. That's just slightly shorter than this talk. Now, 38 minutes, when you're having a really good time hearing someone talk about pickles? That's fine. But 38 minutes when you think you're about to be incinerated by a thermonuclear device? That's a long time. Or maybe your grandmother is about to be incinerated by a thermonuclear device. It's a long time. Now, 38 minutes go by, and then suddenly a new message appears on your phone, on the billboards, everywhere else. And this message simply says, it was an error. There's no missile. You're going to be fine. And not everyone reacted well to that. There were car accidents. Someone had a heart attack. There were problems. Okay. I mean, if you think you're gonna die from above, you're calling your loved ones and saying goodbye to them, aren't you? So you're a little upset. And the next day, the newspaper looked like this. And it said, oops, somebody pressed the wrong button. Now, I'm a UI guy. I'm thinking, there can't be a button like that. There just can't. Can there? Well, the next day, the governor's office sent out this list. I'm sorry, this is not the list. This is the list. Now, I know this to be hyperlinks. And they said, this is the list that came out, and this was the confusing list, and someone chose the wrong option. Now, I looked at that list, and it's confusing, okay? It's confusing to anyone in America. These are the two options right here that you had to choose from. One of them is a drill, or an exercise, or a test, and the other's the real thing. Maybe they're right. Maybe someone just pressed the wrong one. Very possible. Except that the next day, they sent out a different list. And it looked like this. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought you showed us the list already. This is a new one. Are you sure? Yes, we're sure. And it's very similar, right? We see the different lines. One is a test, one is not. It's confusing, I get it. But I look at it and think, it's not a button, that's software, that's a drop-down list, I know what this is, and I went looking for it. And I went looking and looking, and I found the company that did this software for 22 American states. And I found their demo, and I found all sorts of stuff, and this is their demo. And as you can see, you set up a message, you do a drop-down, yay, and then you send it out. You can type in your message. Okay, that's fine. But look at their list. This is their list. It's a little bit easier to understand. They're talking about earthquakes. And there's some test templates, and there's a live template. That should help, right? Look at them side by side. One is easier to read, the other is more difficult, but it doesn't really solve our problem. It doesn't really tell us what's going on here. And I had to ask myself, as you might also be asking, isn't there a speed bump here? Isn't there a stopping point? Isn't there a dialogue box that you have to say yes to if you want to send a nuclear missile warning out? Don't you have to say something about this? Don't you have to do that? And the answer is, yeah, you have to do that. And the software had a dialog box like this. It might not be the exact words. So the question I ask is, if there was a safeguard, what went wrong? All right, what went wrong? How did we get from this UI to this terrible disaster? And I'll tell you a little bit. There was a report written. There's always an investigation. There's always a report. I read it. You're welcome. And I'll give you the little bits of it. First, they blamed poor computer software design. Duh. That's the first thing, okay? There's also something I like to call appalling, terrible content strategy. It's difficult to understand what you're reading. How could you know what to do? So there's poor naming on those lists. They're not organized very well, as you noticed. There are multiple confusing choices. So I'm starting to understand, hey, maybe a mistake was made. Maybe a mistake was made. There's also design failures that I'm sure you could notice just looking at it very quickly. Did you notice that even in the demo, you can do live templates and test templates in the same drop-down? Yeah, you can just throw it all in there, whatever you want, whether it's a tsunami, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a nuclear missile, if you want to. Oh, this is a good one. Once you send the alert, you can't take it back. It's out there. And for 38 minutes, you had software people and officials at their computers. What do we do? What do we do? Send it back. You can't send it back. They literally, the guy who pressed the button, they literally had to say, move. And they worked on it. And then some creative person, 37 minutes into this, said, what if we just sent out another message that's different? And they said, that's brilliant, do it. And 10 seconds later, they said, no, we're just kidding, it's actually just fine. And that's how they hacked the problem. They just simply sent out another alert to everyone in Hawaii. So that's no undo. And again, our users here apparently have too much control over the safety of everyone in Hawaii. Now, the thing about this design that I want you to remember, because you're going to hear it in a couple more places, is that it is actually working exactly as it was supposed to work. If you did a QA test on this software, according to its functionality, it would pass. It would totally pass, just fine. And yet, it leads to this problem. So here's sort of exactly what happened. This guy, there's one person who sent this out, and he was fired, by the way. He was totally fired. And let's go to passes QA. Here we go. Human factors were to blame. Now, this guy was fired. Also, the heads of the agencies, they had to resign in disgrace. All of this stuff happened. But this guy said, no. I did exactly what you told me to do. I did it right. You told me there was a nuclear missile coming, and I warned everyone. I'm the hero. And he sued the state of Hawaii, and I think some of that is actually still going on. That's what he said. I'd do it again. Good villain. I'm glad I did it. Right? What happened was this. There was a shift change. I want you to remember this too, because you're going to hear this again in a second. A whole shift of people leave, a new shift of people come up. The end of the first shift, someone says, we're going to do an exercise. We're going to do a false missile test and see how our systems work. Great, let's do it. Let's surprise those guys in the new shift. Right? So the shift comes on, and they're going to call this exercise. These people are not warned about it. And this is what the guy who pressed the button, all that said. He said, over the intercom, he hears the words, alert, alert. He picks up the receiver on the phone, according to him, and as he's picking up the receiver of the phone, the sound transfers to the phone, and on the way up to his ear, he misses the words, exercise, 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 gets to his ear, and they say, missiles coming in now, you've got to send, right? This is what he claims. I rather doubt this. I think he really did screw up. I think he really did pick the wrong option. I think it was because of the UI. And that's what the report says. But he was upset about being fired, so he tried his best to get around that. So that was your botched shift change. That's going to come back. And again, we talked about the bumbling response. So here's the thing. In order to work software like this correctly, you have to know how to use it. It's not really well designed. So you have to train people and train your team to do it. Not everyone gets trained the same way. They leave and they don't get trained, and then they add more things, and that's why you get the big, terrible drop down, okay? That happens all the time, and that's a part of this disaster, totally a part of this disaster. And here's the real issue that comes up for me time and time again, and I promise this has something to do with pickles, and we're coming back to it. This is our process that's a problem. We have a bad design. And it affects process. Design affects process. We would have never had to worry about a process to solve a problem had we not had the bad design to start it. And the bad process leads to other problems, which keeps going back around and around. It reinforces a bad choice we've made. And we think we have to train people better. We think we have to talk to people more in order to fix it. But we should have started with a better design. Okay, and in terms of impact, everyone was fired, basically. People resigned, and most of the states in the United States had to completely change the way they do emergency reporting, and this software is gone. Sort of a big deal. Now that's tough, right? It was tough for that guy who sent that alert, but what if there's something even more terrible that could have happened because of an interface? So you might not have heard about this. We're going to talk about an almost nuclear meltdown in the United States. And this was in 1979, a long time ago. Yes, I was alive. And this was back in the administration of Jimmy Carter was president. And there is this nuclear facility called 3 Mile Island. It's on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. That might mean nothing to you. Let's just say it's fairly close to New York City, which is a problem. And of course, there was a near meltdown of this facility for 2 days. For 2 days, everyone was worried that this thing was going to melt down and release radioactive debris and cloud into the air. And what do? Do we evacuate the entire northeastern United States? Even in 1979, this was tens and tens and tens of millions of people. All right, it was not going to happen. It was scary, very scary. So scary, I should add, that it had the unfortunate joy of following a movie that came out 2 weeks earlier called The China Syndrome. It was a popular movie in the United States, and the China Syndrome was about a nuclear meltdown accident. And everyone saw this movie, and then 3 Mile Island shows up, and everybody is freaking out about it. And of course, there's going to be an investigation and all this stuff. There's always an investigation. This is President Carter, by the way, wearing these nice little clean booties. I just like showing the president in those. The plant did not melt down. They averted a disaster. A couple of days into it, they found out what the problem was, calmed it down. Okay, good. But then I ask, what was the problem? What exactly happened? There was an investigation. There was a report. I've read the whole thing. Again, you're welcome. And this is the important part of the report, where we find out what happened and why the plant melted down. You see, there's this little valve, little itty-bitty valve in a nuclear plant. It's called the PORV valve. All you need to know about this valve is that it needs to be open and it needs to be closed at certain times, right? It needs to be closed because it needs to keep coolant in the reactor. If it's open, the coolant gets out, reactor gets hot. That's bad. If it's closed, the coolant stays in, reactor's cool. That's good. Well, one day we find out that the PORV valve had been stuck open, okay? Which means all the coolant got out, and it means this reactor heats up. Oh no. Now you think it would be really easy just to say, well, just fix the valve and it's fine, it's done. But This is where the interface comes in. Now, you remember looking at that control room that the president was walking through. That was a bit of a spoiler. Lots and lots and lots of knobs and switches and lights everywhere, right? And the PORV valve did in fact have a little itty-bitty light that would come on. This light would come on to indicate that the PORV valve was in fact closed. And the light was on. So the engineers looked at it and said, why is the reactor getting hot? Well, what about the PORV valve? No problem, the light's on. Good. Let's figure out what else is the word. What else is happening? Meanwhile, they go try to solve other problems, but the actual problem that they missed is still on. But you tell me, but Dean, the light was on. Was the light lying to us? No, not exactly. The light was on, and it indicated not that the valve was open. It simply indicated that the order to close the valve had in fact been successfully sent. Light on. I told him to close the valve. I did my job. Bing! That's it. But that valve was stuck. The light did its job. It did it just right. Lights on, move on. And of course, there were all sorts of problems with shift changes as well, because when people change shifts in the nuclear reactor, they had to go back to the beginning and start trying to solve the problem the way they're supposed to solve it again, every single time missing the actual thing that was wrong, which is why it was getting hotter and hotter and hotter, until it just took one creative engineer, just one, who said, hey, what if that valve is actually open? And they said, come on, the valve's not open, the light's on. He's like, yeah, but what if what we know is not right? What if what we think we know is incorrect? All right, we'll look at it. They look at it, the valve is open, and they fix it and avoid disaster. But there is more, because now we've entered the world of the interface of the control room. And the report goes on to find out more about the interface in the control room. In fact, on any given time during a normal situation, there's at least 52 alarms that are active, and that's when things are going just fine. That's a lot, in my opinion. Also, there are all sorts of ways to tell someone that one of those controls is faulty or broken. Now, you can't just send in a JIRA ticket. You can't call the help desk. You can't Slack someone about it. This is 1979. So you know what you do? You get a piece of paper and you write on it, this switch is broken. And you attach it to the knob. And there were a lot of those. A lot. And the report found that many of those pieces of paper and tags, they covered other switches and they covered other lights, and who knows whether an alarm is on or not. And now they're really starting to find problems with the control room just because of that PORV valve. So here were the problems here. First of all, everything worked the way it was supposed to work. You've already heard that, right? If they did a QA of that PORV valve light, it would have worked just fine. No problem, no problem. For the control room usability, I'm sorry, not very good. Here were some of the quotes from the report. It was just to read quickly, it was the worst control room ever. That's basically what this says. Hideously terrible in every way. Information required was often non-existent, poorly located, or difficult to read. Nice. Okay. The control room was also not designed well itself. And this is another way to say nothing was easy in the control room at all. And so this report is highlighting a problem with a nuclear facility of great note and saying, all from that little PORV valve light, that there are bigger and bigger problems here we just found. Now, of course, there was this confused response, which I just explained to you, that it was very difficult to find the problem because they just had to do things exactly the way they've always done them, and they didn't communicate well with each other. Right? You had to do things on the fly, really quickly. Of course, we're talking about poor error handling. If you don't understand an error is true or that an error exists, how could you possibly do something? This is case in point. And of course, they could only do things one way. It took a creative person to say, let's try something different. And of course, just like in Hawaii, there's this sort of notion that no one is wrong, even though the United States almost had this terrible disaster. And this actually it was a big deal in the United States. I cannot overstate that. We were on the way up with use of nuclear power. After 3 Mile Island, totally down. Nuclear power fell out of fashion, fell out of popularity. No one was building them anymore. And now here we are in the United States, way, way behind on nuclear energy, really because of 3 Mile Island, really because of the PORV valve, actually because of that little light. That's it. Little things mean something. One more. This one you might have heard of. This is back in the year 2000. So some of you may have heard about it in the United States. There's some complexity to this, so I'll do my best. In the election of the year 2000, a presidential election, there was a problem. At the end of election night, we didn't know who the president was yet. For America, that's a real problem. We're used to knowing who the president is the evening of the vote, maybe near midnight, but we'll know. In this case, we didn't. It was an unexpectedly close election. Now, you may not know how America elects presidents, so here I go, because it's weird. The United States doesn't have one big election for president. The United States has 50 states, and so there are actually 50 state elections. So far, so good. And I'm from South Carolina, so over here on the East Coast. And if South Carolina's votes all go for one candidate, that candidate gets all of the electoral votes for that state. Bigger states have more votes. So California had 54. Little South Carolina had 8. You amass those numbers together, you need 270. It's a weird number. That's how many you need to win. Whoever gets to 270 electoral votes first, president. But at the end of the night, look what was happening. George Bush had 246. Al Gore had 266. Really close, but not there. There's one state left. It's Florida, and it was too close to call. And by too close to call, I mean really close, like a few hundred votes in this entire state. We're going to tip the election one way or the other. And so people started looking very closely at voting patterns in Florida to see what was going on. And they found out something interesting. Down in a city in the south of Florida, they found some irregular voting patterns. This city down in the south almost always voted dominantly Democratic, like 80% to 20% Democratic. The Democrats are the left-wing party in America. But there were a very high number of right-wing votes in this city, and not just the Republican right-wing candidate, but a far-right candidate. Why did this happen? Was this a new voting pattern, or was this a mistake? And so people start looking, because we didn't know for like 5 weeks who the president was. Because in Florida, they were counting and recounting and counting again and trying to figure out how we actually can figure out who won. And everyone is suing everyone else. And this was the problem. This is the interface part. This is the voting system used in the year 2000 in Florida. And even then, even in 2000, this was considered very old. This was a paper ballot system. And you fed the paper ballot into this machine. Here's the paper ballot. You feed the ballot into the machine, and you take this little metal spike, and you poke a hole into the paper next to the candidate of your choice. Now, you tell me what to do looking at this. There's a bunch of candidates. In the United States, there's really only two parties. It's really Democrat or Republican, that's it. There's a lot of other people running here, but no one even knows who they are, okay? Republican and Democratic, they're up top. You have to poke a hole over there in the middle. It's called a butterfly because each side is the wings, right? The middle is the spine. Up in the upper left, you see the Republican and the Democrat. So far, so good, right? Okay, no problem. If you want to vote for the Republican, it seems fairly easy. The arrow is pointing right to that 3. You did it. If you wanted to vote, let's say for the Reform Party, this was the far-right party that no one ever really heard of, that got tons of votes. Looks pretty easy. You just point to the 4, boom, and you just voted for the Reform Party. But if you wanted to vote for the Democrat, Al Gore, what do you do? Do you go for the option that's on the top, which you see first, or the option with the 5? Who can say? Could be either one, couldn't it? Now, if you chose the one up top, congratulations, you just voted for the super far right party. You didn't even want the right party, and you voted for the super far right party. That's what happened, and that's at least the theory, and there's good evidence to suggest that that did occur. The question was, how much of it occurred? And it was hard to know. So they counted and they recounted, and it was a big mess in America. You know, whether you poked all the way through the paper or there was a piece of paper still hanging on, do you count that one? I don't know. It was a big pain. The Supreme Court in the United States had to step in and say, okay, you've counted and recounted enough. But that means a president was chosen when we're mostly sure, kinda, a little, maybe. So of course this was bad design. It's easy to see the bad design here, right? I mean, it's screaming at you. All right, so we know that. Very awkward to try to poke holes in an interface as it is. It does work the way it's supposed to, though. Third in a row works just the way it's supposed to work. It was that dumb user who got it wrong. The design here had to be done the way it was because the butterfly ballot machines existed, and you had to create the ballot to fit inside the machine. So there was nothing you could change in the design. The only thing you could have possibly have changed is have only 2 choices and put them far away from each other. That's it. The design was dictated by the machine itself. And of course, it only worked if everything was fine. If the election's not close, nobody cares about some voting irregularities here or there because it doesn't matter. Even if they all went one way or all went the other, the election would have already been decided, so no one cares. But when it's close, it really matters. And the problem with the design was revealed, and there was really no plan to deal with it whatsoever. Everything that happened was new as soon as that problem occurred. And for America, this was tough on us. At that point, we're like, what do we do? You know, did we, I think we chose the right president. I'm pretty sure we did. Is as close as we've got. Choosing a president's a big deal. Whether one president is elected or another affects the entire history of the United States. And that has an effect on the world as well. And we're shaken to our core. All of these systems had to change. All the old systems out. And now actually Florida has like the best system and counting system of all the states now. It's amazing now. Okay, Now, back to the important stuff. Me and the pickle. Because I haven't told you everything about the pickle yet. You remember the chips and pickle button, right? There it is. Do you want to know why I always get a pickle at Jason's Deli? Because it's not just this button. I'll tell you why. When you go to the cash register at Jason's Deli, and if you're me, you say, turkey sandwich and no pickle. They have to press the chips and pickle button, of course. So now, what do? So they do this. They say, hey, Frank, that order I just put in, no pickle. And Frank's like, okay, great, no pickle. And then Frank starts making 8 or 9 sandwiches in a row. And by the time he gets to Dean's, he can't remember which one had a pickle and what didn't. He probably forgot, and it's muscle memory anyway. Pickle goes in every single time. That's how that goes. It's actually worse, though, because during lunch, there's lots of people making sandwiches. You say, hey, order number 7, Frank, that's no pickle. Well, then Frank's over here. He's probably not even going to make the sandwich. It's someone else who sees the ticket. It's not even Frank. Frank forgets to tell. So it takes a human saying, fix it, another human to communicate to another human. I'm getting a pickle every time in that system. There's almost no way I cannot get a pickle. It's going to happen. And that's why that happens at Jason's Deli all the time. All the time it happens to me. Okay, there are offenses here that mean something to me. First of all, do you want to know why there's a chips and pickle button at all? Why there's not a chips button and a pickle button? Well, I'll tell you, because I asked that manager. I wanted to see the interface. There was not enough room for 2 buttons. That's it. They had to just fit 1 button in the space. Just make it both. Done. Everything works as it was supposed to work. Nothing went wrong, except somehow I got a pickle every time. It went wrong for me. Everything was inconsistent, right? You remember how it was different whether I was in person, it was different whether I was online. In fact, online made no sense whatsoever how the pickle system worked. There's more problems to that. Everything is internally focused. Now, I know this is a stretch. Jason's Deli doesn't think of me when they're making their menu, right? They think pickles, chips, everyone gets one. Done! And that's good for the 99.9% of people. So not good for me. Their internal focus actually hurts me there. More, when we're dealing with real interfaces, internal focus hurts most people. In this case, it just hurts me, okay? And they had this terrible process. It's always process. Always comes back to process. Design affects process, right? So there's really poor edge case testing. I'm the edge case. They never tested with me. Everything got lost in translation, right? Frank to someone else doing the sandwich. And of course, this is the result, the horrifying result. I always get a pickle. Now, okay. What does it mean? Because it's fun to say, Dean gets a pickle, and I found out all these UI offenses. It's great. But then I got to thinking, why does it matter whether there's a small UI offense for a pickle? Who cares? It's just me. Get over it. I'll never get over it. But when it comes to like nuclear missiles or nuclear reactors or nationwide elections, those little problems actually do mean something, don't they? They mean quite a lot. So let's look at this design. This is an intranet for a hospital, really simple, that we designed. It went great, and we did a lot of user testing, and we spoke to a lot of nurses and did our research in order to make this what it needed to be. And there were all sorts of lovely features in here that the users liked. That's great. We did our job. They even had a policy and procedure area where they could look up any policy and procedure right there, really quick. They're near a patient. They could do it. They loved it. And in our research, we knew they were going to love it because they told us how important it was. Users do that. They tell you how important things are. But we looked really closely at some of the statements. And we looked at one in particular, like, I can't do my job without this intranet. Yeah, good thing you have us. It's going to cost double. Okay. And then this is the good one, where a nurse says, hey, I have got to get this stuff fast. I have got to get this stuff now, or else something could happen with my patient. I have got to get a policy. I've got to get a procedure. I'm arguing with a doctor, whatever it is. That's how important it is. And when we saw that in our research, it wasn't just us creating a simple little interface for finding different policies or procedures, because anyone could do that, and it's kind of boring. But when we found out how desperately the nurses needed it, well, we stood up straight, and we were serious when we were designing it. It needed to be great, because the little things we were making meant something. So that's our first lesson. The little things we do, they mean quite a lot. Someone designed all the stuff that I showed you today, right? All the little itty-bitty things had to be designed. They were just designed badly in this case. And every day we're working on little, small bits of interfaces, and we have no idea which one of those is going to end up being super important to someone. Maybe, and I get it, it just means their life is a little less annoying. That's good. We'll take that. Maybe someday it means some young person doesn't get a pickle when I did. That's good. It could also mean we avert disaster. Totally. Getting it functionally right is never, ever, 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 ever enough. You have to test for things you can't possibly see yet. That's where really stress testing your design comes in. And of course, any little problem we make in an interface affects a process. There's a process around an interface, and it starts to go wrong based on design. So the things you're doing have more effect. And so if you're a UX person, or you're a product owner, you have to think about process around design as much as the design itself, because getting a process right helps the design be better, right? Very, very, very important. So for us, I just want you to know you're going to go, after this conference, you're going to go back to doing the stuff you're doing every day. And I want to encourage you that it really does matter what you do. It matters what you work on, the littlest thing. Otherwise, I just need you to know this, okay? If you remember anything at all, I hope I can change your mind to get more people to truly hate pickles. I think that's really where we need to get. But I'm doing my best. And that is the chips and pickle story. That's what I learned from UI blunders and terrible problems. There's where you can find me. I'm happy to answer some questions. I know we're about at time. If you have some other crazy question that you can't get to here, I'd love to answer it. But mostly, I'm just excited that you're here at Wey Wey Web. I'm excited we can get it going. And I think this whole conference is going to be wonderful. So if you have a question, we'll go for it. I can't see anyone. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Yay.